All right, week 10, problem solver toolbox. Who is up first?
Well, I think I'm up first. The takeaways from this, I'm going to start at the bottom with a personal note that says, basically, this took me back to one of the first chapters on Rule 2, where you have to be strong enough to be weak to be strong. And so everything is reciprocal when we're coming back to what I took out of this chapter and actually these the toolbox, because everything comes back, and if we're not facilitating and willing to do that, we're going to lose people because they have to be successful. As a superintendent, we have to guide them, and that's what I picked up with the toolbox in this chapter, where we're meeting that meeting playbook is phenomenal. There's a lot of pieces in there that we can come back to, but what I picked up is a theme is that it's reciprocal. It keeps coming back to what we've been talking about, that you have to go slow, you have to work on things. And then what I also appreciated was that they kept referring back to the norms and having the norms or working agreements that you need to have in as part of a critical component of the design, because they need to start and you need to utilize those. Be purposeful and have a direction. That was something else, and it's out of context. I'm taking this a little bit, but it has to have a way to be assessed. And I picked up on that. Another key takeaway: focus on collaboration, non-judgmental methods, and then Figure C1 was a big one for me, where it talked about the argumentative piece, debate, discourse, conversation, and the way we communicate. It moved from overpowering and then winning to contributing and co-creating. So we're moving away from it's I to it's we. And that brings it back to that collaboration piece again. We need to shift that thinking intentionally from I to we. And then consider space and orientation. I never really thought about this, even though we do. And the way we set up our meetings, setting up that space and thinking about the human needs space. I thought that was kind of interesting how they pointed that out, that you have to have a human needs space, but don't put it too close so it's distracting and far enough away that they know where it's at. So they talked about it in small and medium, a little different than the large group. I appreciated the orientation graphs that they had inside of this as well. And then continually to develop the toolbox. I always say this, that our intellectual toolbox is never full. What we're trying to do is always add to that. And if there's anything that I come out of this with as a superintendent, potential superintendent, is that we're always adding to it. And if we're finding new and innovative ways to collaborate, this is another way of doing it, is to go back to these resources that were in here because it's organized. I like the fact that they put administrivia is one that is to be delegated out, and everything was organized in terms of that in chronological or alphabetical. So there was some great stuff in that chapter, and the takeaways that I have is, that playbook, honestly, working with those norms, and then looking at that from a we mindset, and then going back to you have to be a little vulnerable to be a good leader. So those are some things that I picked up as I read through this chapter.
Yeah, I think a lot of us will probably, as I was looking through our slides, hit on the same things that stuck out to us. I think it was a great reminder to all of us that, like, because when you stereotypically think of a leader, you think of like they're in control, they have the power. And this is really reminding us to be like servant leaders, and it's a team, that when you are a good leader, you're not at the head front doing it all. You're working together, you're giving other people the tools they need to help lead also. And so I thought that was a really good reminder. I really liked the shifting of, well, I need you to do this, I think this, into we. And I just think that shift in your mindset also then it shifts like how you attack new things with the group. And even though we, to add on to that, even though we in like decision making, it's not just the administration making the decisions, it's or the leader, it's the group as a whole. There was that like pyramid or triangle with that.
Yep, that's what I agree on that. And what came to mind for me is, I don't know, like we're ESU3, I think a couple of you are. They organize their meetings a lot like that. If you think about it, they always arrange the room in a certain way, and so Yeah, as you look over the slides, we all kind of had about the same kind of takeaways, and so a lot of what we share will be similar, but just kind of thinking about the way you set up a meeting, I guess I never really dug too deep into it. Um, but then I started reading about how setting up the meeting, the first thing came to mind was ESU3, and then they've got the things on the walls for all their writings, and it's like they must have had this book already or something. I don't know.
Well, it's like such a piece that you don't think about. Like, it's just like, oh, that's just how the room's set up. But then you think about like past experiences and meetings where you felt like you were included and everyone was a part of it because of the setup versus
Yeah,
meetings where it was like, oh, these people are in it, I'm on the outside, or, like it's congested. And you're like, oh, that actually really does make a difference.
yeah. And something else so we have a phenomenal culinary arts program at Plasmith. And whenever I have large meetings, they will um, put together a charcuterie a board with meat and cheese board. Um, and I see that, and like it, you'd be amazed how much more engaged people get when there's food there. I mean
It's
that,
a charcuterie board.
yeah, that's what it is. So anyway, that's probably not, it's not in the problem solver's toolbox, but it's helpful.
No, I, I
100%.
think you've touched on that with the meeting piece, and thank you for pointing that out because honestly, I'm not a person. I'm very good about putting pieces together for systems, but I'm not very good about living in the affective domain. So when it's about taking care of the public, I always have to be reminded, well, what are we doing for snacks?
Mhm.
Um, and where are our breaks going to be? So when I put an agenda together, that's where my assistants or even my secretaries will say, don't forget about the breaks. Don't forget about this. And it's not intentional. It's just I'm very businesslike when I'm trying to get those meetings in and the school improvement put together. So it was a huge reminder. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Troy, I like how you address the I to we thinking. If if you have a superintendent or even a building leader or a group leader that's an I thing, they're a culture killer right away. You need to weed those people out. So
Very good.
I don't know whose slide this was. This was
Oh,
not.
this is mine. Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
So I'm gonna hit a lot of the same points as Troy just did. That the meeting playbook is essential. A well-planned meeting is a successful meeting. And being in the classroom still, I think about like a well-planned day is a very more successful day than you're like running around like just trying to like make copies last minute. That doesn't feel because then you go into your classroom as frantic. You can't just expect the meeting to go as you like think or like, oh, it'll come to me what we need to talk about. And I think we've all been in meetings where it's like, yep, they had the agenda, they're ready to go, and meetings where it's like, why are we having this meeting? Or like this, we're all over the place. And so thought that was very important. Glossary terms and group organizers, they include all the essential information. I thought the big part that also Troy hit on was group norms, how you need to have the group norms set, roles, communication, the meeting space, what we talked about, set up. And I thought that like all parts of the toolbox are useful and they very much overlap with each other. So it's not like, oh, this one's better than this one because they're all kind of intertwined and they all need each other. So my biggest takeaway was to have group norms established, and that will cover most of the problem solvers toolbox. And you shift your mindset to we, not I, and you need to come prepared to each meeting.
Yeah. Norms are really important at Alcorn this year. I lead our PLC and we developed our norms together as a group. And we just, I mean, they're always written on our agenda, but I feel like everybody really follows them. Maybe because we wrote them together or I just have a good group. I don't know, but they are very important and we are really good about sticking with them. And our meetings are the most successful they've ever been this year.
What I appreciate about you pointing out the norms piece again. In now, Brittany, you've qualified it as well. When I start working with norms with my staff, I always point out the fact that when we're doing the norms piece and we're trying to get you to have a voice, I always refer, and this is going to age me a bit, but I always talk about Rush and their song Free Will. There's a line in there where they say, even if you don't choose, you had a choice. And I use that with my staff, telling them that same thing. So you can say you didn't have a choice, but you did. And so that's huge when we're working in our norms. And that goes way back to what we started this with. And so I really appreciate that you've summarized that too, Megan, as well. So thank you very much. You nailed it.
Well, I think you point out, like we've all noticed through this, is a well-planned meeting is a successful meeting. How many meetings have we gone to and sat there and you're like, seriously, why are we here? But if we follow the playbook for something, I think we can have a playbook and utilize pieces of this from a large, very important decision we need to make down to a minute, a more of a minor decision we need to make, just by having it planned out and having all these things we've talked about, and that's pretty good, even if you don't choose, you had a choice or something. Um, yeah, you always have a choice, and you always get a chance to voice your choice. Sometimes it's the choice you wanted, sometimes it's not, but you always have an opportunity to say how you feel.
Yeah, I agree, Megan. The playbook, just like everyone said, I kind of wrote about it in mine. It's the lesson plan to the meeting. We all know when we go into a classroom, if the lesson plan, if there wasn't thought out, it wasn't well prepared, they kind of flounder. And I feel like you can tell when you're in a PD or a meeting that is being ran by a district personnel that if they didn't really plan too well, you can kind of tell.
Yeah, so this is mine, and it hits on a lot of the same thing. Um, I think I kind of touched on this a little bit, like the group size is important to keep in mind is a small, medium, large group. That's going to have some bearing on how you prepare for it. And I thought, like, evaluate the meeting. Sometimes, and I know we've all been there because we're all in education. You have a 7:30 meeting and it's 8 o'clock and you got to disperse because you got teachers have to get to the classroom. If you are presently a teacher, you've got to get to the classroom, and you walk into your office and there's been, two parents waiting for you, and all of a sudden you don't really evaluate the meeting. How did it go? Did we get things accomplished? So I think that's a big part of what we can't, we don't want to forget that part of it. How did our meeting go? What can we do differently? And then I hit on that, the we side communication, the we side. Um, Sound like west side when I say we side, but the trigger, the we side that they have there, and then the strategies for dealing with difficult behaviors. That kind of stuck out to me because sometimes when we're in these meetings and we've got the people that have been described in prior chapters, I don't want to quote who they are, what they are, but the ones who are either there for their own well-being or the naysayers or whatever. How do we deal with the difficult behavior? Um, I don't know if anybody ever thinks that, okay, if we're in this meeting and things start to go south, here's how we'll deal with it. So a lot of the very same things we've all talked about. Um, but I think for me, maybe I don't do as good a job evaluating how the meeting went because once the meeting's over, boom, I'm on to the next thing. And I want to do a better job of evaluating how the meeting went.
I couldn't agree more with that. I'm like thinking back as you were talking about that of like, when have I like I do when it's at the end of the day and when I have and be able to go back to my classroom and like the day's over, and you're like, okay, we got those things accomplished, especially when we have an agenda and we're able to check off. Our MTSS leader is really good about that. He always has the agenda up and we are able to check off what we have and then there's final thoughts and everyone's can see it and is following along. So I feel like we do a good job there. But like you said, those meetings that are either like during my plan time and then I got to go get my kids, pick them up and or at the beginning of the day, I just move on and I forget about the meeting.
Right.
Yeah, Todd, I think that the assessment piece, I alluded to that a little bit in mine, and one of the things that I started doing the last couple of years with my staff, I put a summary zone inside of my norms. So as we go through our agenda or we go through our norm setting for the day, we're going to review at the summary zone. So one of our norms for the day is that's one of them. We are going to review with the summary zone. So we have to define what that looks like collectively. Is it going to be the five Ys or five Ws? Is it going to be a PAR or is it going to be one of the new systems? We are summarizing our meetings somehow, some way to give feedback to everybody about what we went through that day. It might be as simple as a formative, but we're doing that. And I started doing that a couple years ago. That is an absolute win. And thank you for picking up on that because it's paid big dividends for me. So thank you. Good work.
All right, this one. I just want to apologize if I'm making everyone dizzy. For some odd reason, both my girls are screaming their minds off upstairs, and I did. I wanted to get to a quiet space, and everywhere I went, it just got louder. So I apologize for that.
You're fine, fine.
So my takeaways, my first thought after reading the chapter was this is a summary of every professional development I've ever been to in my educational career. It's like they all read the same chapter, and that's how they're running the meeting. Is what kind of what I thought. Um, from the post-it notes on the board on the wall to just the mind mapping to I've done all that. I was kind of chuckling as I read. I was like, man, that this is kind of how professional developments are ran. And then the meeting playbook, that's kind of what I said about yours, Megan, is this is the lesson plan for the meeting. You should never go, especially if you're running the meeting, you should never go into that meeting kind of just by the seat of your pants. You need to know what you're doing. And Todd kind of alluded to this last time because if there are some difficult behaviors that come up and you don't even really know where you're going into this meeting, it's hard to steer them back or it's hard to answer those questions when emotions get brought into that meeting. When they were talking about roles, they said the process observer. Um, I thought that's someone kind of just keeping track of everyone's if they're staying on task, if they're doing what they're supposed to, kind of an I got you person. And they said it's not what that's supposed to be, but I kind of feel like in a room full of professionals, you should not need a process observer, especially if you build a team, they're buying into the culture. You should not, that should never be needed if everyone's kind of falling in line to and believing in the same idea. That's kind of my thought on that. Um, the meeting agenda, I think, should be addressed at the beginning of the meeting so everyone knows what to expect, how long to stay on a topic. We're not going to go trail off onto these different things. If we do, someone should hold me accountable. Hey, we're supposed to be talking about this, okay? Right? Because people's time is valuable. I don't know about you guys, but I hate sitting in meetings where we get nothing accomplished, right? If I'm out of my building at a district meeting and we're there for a half a morning and I walk out thinking, what did we just do? Um, my time is valuable and I want to know what's going on and I want to accomplish what we need to accomplish. We talked about the I versus we communication. On a bunch of other your guys' slides and the meeting manager and the facilitator. In my eyes, I thought these should be the same people. Whoever organizes the meeting, creates the meeting agenda, gets everyone where they need to be. I don't know why then you would then hand off the meeting to someone else to run the meeting that you spent the time putting together. So I think those should be the same person in my eyes. I guess I don't. How do you guys feel about that?
I
So
agree.
as I read that, Austin, I agree with you. I was separated with that as I read through that, but with the way you brought that up just now, our job, in my opinion, feeding into what you're saying, is to protect the process. Once we set up those meetings, we're going to protect that as a facilitator, guide the process, and let decisions take place. So I'm looking at this from our meeting standpoint, and that's the way if I looked at it from purely what we're trying to do and problem solve this, I would agree with you. So I like the way you picked that out.
Yeah. I liked your points of your process observer and your meeting manager as well, especially the process observer that you shouldn't need that. And no, you really shouldn't, because there's always, if we are all professionals, which we are, there's always going to be someone in the meeting that, will observe something and bring it back to focus, or just be like, oh, wait a minute, we talked about that. We're all good at what we do. So there will be somebody that picks up whatever needs to be picked up,
Mm.
I think.
Yeah, I really like how you brought the lesson plan thing in. I've picked up on that almost this entire process is, I mean, you got your target and that's what you want to get accomplished. And then at the end, you have your assessment. Did you get accomplished what you want to get accomplished? And, obviously you got the chunking as you're going through your agenda. So yeah, I agree 100% on like, basically it's a lesson plan for a meeting. And I agree with you on the professional development. This is their thing.
Yeah. Where did my slide go?
I think you skipped it. Yours was right after Troy.
Oh, okay. I was like, mine got lost. There it is.
There
I
you
guess
are.
I guess I wanted to go last. Sorry. Okay. I didn't even realize I skipped it, but I'm gonna repeat myself a lot here. But I loved the meeting playbook chapter. Because it just made me think of all the meetings that I've been in my education career. Um, the good ones that were productive, and then the ones that I felt like, why I feel like we just had a meeting to have a meeting, just to, okay, we had a meeting. That's to maybe cross off a requirement or something. So we love those efficient and productive meetings. One thing that I caught in there was that we can be inherently bad communicators. I think as educators, we're a lot better than some people, but we can be more like, I want to hear myself talk, or I want to hear my opinion, or whatever it may be. And so we already talked about the I to we, but they talked about the communication mode, the purpose, disposition, interaction, keep communication open, keep it collaborative, and including everyone's voice. I picked up on the foundational principles for group meeting design, voice choice, just total group involvement. You guys also talked about space configuration. We talked about norms and facilitation and meeting organizers. One thing that Todd talked about, you guys, somebody else probably did too, but was group size. I think everybody kind of touched on it. I read that small groups typically are more skillful at their decisions because maybe they're used to working together, or there's less opinions, less different people to work together with. Medium-sized group, like they work on moving from task to solution. Large groups, that's your district staff type meetings, and those are more necessary when you're doing strategic planning or district staff development, things like that. And then just that glossary of terms at the end was so good. Like, it has everything you need in there. So I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot with what you guys all just said, but those were some of the things that I also picked up on.
Troy, I thought of your plan when you had your layout and how you had subcommittees, and like what this chapter touched on, that like small groups are usually work better together because less voices are trying to be heard. So people probably feel more comfortable. And I thought of like how you knew you were going to have a large group of people that needed to be a part of your strategic plan. And so, or for your problem. And so having those subcommittees is what's going to make it more successful, because people are able to actually get tasks done and discussions completed when there are smaller groups.
Very good. Brittany, and I appreciate that, Megan, because it does create new problems for me too, because I have to now problem solve 5 groups versus 1. So very interesting. But Brittany, as you went through that, I just remembered some research, and I think I might have shared it with this group too. Have you guys ever done some research on what Perky has brought up for communication in terms of intentionally inviting or disinviting language. And it just popped in my mind as you're saying that. When we say we're inherently bad, we can be inherently bad communicators. It's absolutely true. An example of that would be signage that we put out for students, like "Stay out of this room." Another way of saying that would be, "Please do not enter this room." And Perky's research is very compelling to that. You nailed that right on the head because we can say one thing and it comes off as something totally different. That's a perfect way of looking at that. So thank you for sharing that.
Any other thoughts, anybody?
Yeah, I was gonna mention on mine, but I forgot to add it. When you said space configuration, I was just reading through the page. I was cracking up because it said tables are round, period. Like sometimes we have a choice in which tables we can use, or good lighting in HVAC, or make sure your internet doesn't drop. Whoever wrote our text must have some pretty good resources to be able
Yeah.
to. My point on all this is just provide the best that you can to your staff is what I was just cracking up on that. Tables are round, period. I don't know that I have ever sat at a round table in the district I'm in currently. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like we can control those things. No, you gotta kind of work with what you got. Like, let's
We,
think in the real
we
world.
would
We
be
have
happy
all
with
rectangle
electricity.
tables at my district also.
We would be happy with electricity in our district right
yeah,
now.
no kidding.
Yeah, and if the internet stays on the whole time, all those things.
That's us. If we walk out and the internet and everything worked the way it's supposed to the whole time, we're like, that was a win.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, good point about, you
Good,
know,
good pick out, Austin. That's funny.
All right. Any
Thanks,
last
guys.
thoughts? All right.
Good
I
chapter.
think we're good.
yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
thank you.
Thank you.